name Nathanael is found only in the Gospel of John. Elsewhere, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we find the name Bartholomew, which means son of Ptolemy. The evidence that Nathanael and Bartholomew are actually the same person is mostly circumstantial, but it is convincing. Both are associated closely with Philip, and in some places where legend also places Bartholomew, there are early references to Nathanael instead. Church tradition also claims that they are the same person, which allows us to know a little more about the heart of this disciple and how he came to become one. It is Philip who came to him with a simple proclamation. We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. In other words, the Messiah. Instead of rejoicing at this good news, or at least asking Philip some more questions, Nathanael responded by essentially laughing in his face. Nazareth, can anything good come from there? Once upon a time, if you wanted to insult someone's hometown, you called it a podunk town in the middle of nowhere. In other words, a dull, insignificant place, a cultural backwater, where nothing changes and nothing ever happens. Nazareth was that kind of place, at least in the eyes of Nathanael. If something important was ever going to happen, it's for sure that it wouldn't start in Nazareth. It's a common mistake that most of us make to equate big with important. God, however, often prefers to use those small and seemingly insignificant places and times in our life and bless those, the sort of things, and make them the sort of things that really matter. Someone once noted that if you want to change the world, don't build a palace, plant a seed. The palace will crumble into dust, but that small seed may one day become a forest. In other words, look for the small ways that you can make the world better, and you just might change it forever. In any case, Philip did not seem to take offense. Instead, he just said, "Come and see." When Jesus saw them approaching, he said, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." High praise indeed. Which is to say that in Nathanael, what you see is what you get. There was no pretense, no fraud, no hypocrisy. He was truly a sincere and upright man. Most people might have just accepted this as a compliment, but Nathanael wanted to know why this man would say that. "How do you know me?" he asked Jesus, thinking, of course, that Jesus didn't know him from Adam, so to speak. How then could he say he was a man without deceit? To which Jesus replied, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree, before Philip called you." And now here you can let your imagination run free, because we are not told what really transpired under the fig tree. The usual assumption is that Nathanael was probably praying, and perhaps he felt God's presence strongly there while he was in that place. Maybe he was praying for the world to be changed and the glory of Israel to be restored. Maybe he was praying for forgiveness or for God's help in a desperate time in his life. And suddenly he felt that reassurance of God's mercy and love. That might help explain his reaction to the words of Jesus. Because if so, then Jesus was now claiming to be the source of this mercy and love that he had experienced. How quickly his mind made that connection. How quickly Nathanael went from being a skeptic to being a believer. If Jesus knew his mind and heart in this way, then Jesus had also been the one who had heard and who had answered his prayer. And if so, then Philip was wrong. Jesus was more than just the long-awaited Messiah. "Rabbi," he said, "you are the Son of God. you are the King of Israel. You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than that, Jesus said. And he also added, very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. In other words, you ain't seen nothing yet. In the story of Jacob from Genesis 28, in a dream, Jacob saw a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. By alluding to this event, Jesus was saying that he is the ladder. He is the connection between heaven and earth. And henceforth, all the angels of God would be ascending and descending on the Son of Man. The messengers of God would do his bidding and act in harmony with Jesus. The Son of Man was now the means and the message and the way that heaven was connected to earth. Nathanael was the first one to connect the dots and understand that. As for his deeds as an apostle, tradition says that he went first to India and then to Greater Armenia. The connection with India is actually based upon the writing of Eusebius concerning the journey of the 2nd century Pontianus to Konkan coast of India to preach the gospel, only then to discover that they had already possessed the gospel, and they looked to Bartholomew as their founding father. The evidence would actually seem much stronger that Armenia was his field of mission, since the Armenian church now claims both Bartholomew and Thaddeus as their patron saints. Tradition says that Bartholomew died in Albanopolis, Armenia. There, so legends say, he had converted the king of Armenia, Palmius, to Christianity. This enraged the king's brother, who was afraid there might be some sort of backlash from the Romans. So the prince ordered Bartholomew to be tortured and executed. Should you happen to go see the Sistine Chapel exhibit at the fairgrounds in Albuquerque, you might notice the rather bizarre image of a skeletal figure holding what looks like his own skin. This is actually a reference to the legend that Bartholomew was flayed alive as a means of his death. Maybe, but there are other legends that he died on a cross, just like St. Andrew. While his death in Armenia remains a strong possibility, there's actually no historical record of a King Palmius in Armenia, even though the record there is actually pretty complete. There is, however, a ruler named Palmius in India during the same time. So maybe the other scholars who would place his death in India are actually correct. Either way, Bartholomew died a martyr. Like the other apostles, Bartholomew also now has his own feast day. And the people living on the small Italian island of Lipari like to tell of that time when they were carrying the statue of St. Bartholomew down the hill from the Cathedral of St. Bartholomew. And suddenly it became too heavy and had to be set down. They tried again, but after easily lifting it up, once again it suddenly became too heavy. The third time that they were thus delayed and had to set it down once again, they saw the walls just ahead of them suddenly collapse onto the road. Had they not been delayed in their parade, they would have all been killed. And they consider it a miracle that they were not. A small miracle, perhaps. Sometimes a small miracle is enough. What then is your own faith based upon? Is it enough to know that God watches over you? Would it be enough to know that God hears your prayers, even if they are whispered in private and are all about the small things in your own life? Would it be enough to know that God has truly forgiven your sins and has connected you now with all the blessings of heaven? If you are honest to God, if you come to him without deceiving yourself, God will welcome you just as you are and forgive your sins. You may still be a skeptic about all this religious stuff, but the invitation is always there. Come and see. When you do, it is likely you will find that God has always been there, and God has listened to every desperate prayer you ever made. And far from ignoring you, Jesus has always thought that you were someone special, with a good heart and a clear mind, someone who would indeed make a good disciple. Skeptics are always welcome. Open your mind to the possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, someone good has come from Nazareth. Be safe, and God bless you.